Hello again. Today I'm doing a follow on from the last video that I did about Alzheimer's, because this one's important as well. I'm just going to set a timer on here because I talk too much and my camera can only hold 30 minutes tops, so I'm going to keep it so that I don't go over it, because I don't know, I can't edit with what I've got at the moment. So this one's about whistleblowing, and it's based on the care homes I've worked in. So I've worked in about 6 in my time, and one of them was a council led one and the rest were private. So one was owned by one lady and the others were owned by small companies. So aside from the council one, the other ones were all literally for profit. That was it, and profit came before people. And you could see the marked difference between them and the council run, which was, it was basically a service. So there was a massive difference in both, and I absolutely loved the one where the council run it, because the food was nice, they had plenty enough staff, and there was laughter and joy in the building, and you could feel it, and people were treated with more respect, and it was more regimented. So everybody had to follow a role, and they had to write down everything you did. So you didn't get away with neglect, laziness, not doing your bit. So everybody had duties to do every day, and you had to mark off when you'd done it and how you'd done it, and you had to write down the time you did it and everything. So on that job, when I did the night shift, we had to go around every hour in the night, and above all the residents' beds they had like a fob, and what you did, you had to carry this like fob and you had to touch this panel above the bed, and what it did is it made a beeping noise and it logged in the time that you'd been there, and it also proved that somebody had gone in the room. So you didn't get away with being lazy. If you didn't go around every hour and do that, then they knew you wasn't checking in on the residents. And I actually enjoyed that, and I had respect for the way it was run, because it was run fairly and nobody got neglected or overlooked or anything, and everyone was treated properly as well. So the difference between that and the other buildings, so the other buildings I worked in started off great. Oh, everyone loved me. I went to the interview, oh, you've got the right attitude, you're just what we're looking for, until I started. And then I realised quite quickly that I wasn't what they was looking for at all, because what they wanted was somebody who just said yes to everything. And if you got a duty manager who was often not on that much more money than you, because it's a poorly paid position in private care, it's minimum wage, and so the duty managers were often on poor wages themselves, and quite often they were overworked, underpaid, and they got to a point of being apathetic and they just fed up of it. So then by the time I started there, they were already in a place of, I don't really care unless the residents' relatives come, and then I'll come alive and pretend I care and show them I care, and then everyone will think I'm a nice person. But as soon as they've gone, I'm back to going outside and having a half-hour smoke break with all the other staff. And so one of the first jobs that I did, within a week I wanted to leave, because I just felt so despondent and angry and just fed up with it all, because the way it was run was just absolutely shocking. And I used to go up to the manager and say, I don't understand why all the smokers can go outside at the same time for an half-an-hour smoke break, leaving me on my own with 15 vulnerable people. 15. And she'd be like, well, they're not causing any trouble, you know, we're just having a cigarette. And I went, but how come people who smoke are allowed all these breaks, but I can only have half an hour in the morning, sorry, 15 minutes, half an hour lunch, and 15 minutes later, how come I can't go outside all the time? Well, you don't smoke. So straight away I had a bee in my bonnet, because I thought, well, that ain't even right. And what happened is, because this lady who was in charge of the unit had made friends with the other staff, they all became like her, and she allowed it. So when she went for a smoke, they all went with her, leaving me alone with 15 people. Now, half an hour is a long time to be left alone with that amount of people, you know, especially when you've got them all wandering about doing things, and there's always one person trying to escape all the time. And that's why all the windows could only open like a few inches, and the doors all had keypads, so you had to know the key to get in. So it was kind of high security. But people were in and out all the time, like workmen or visitors and stuff, and sometimes the residents would get past and do a runner, and sometimes you wouldn't even know they'd gone until you were rounding everybody up for meal times and stuff. But I just found the old place was absolutely shocking. It was like, the worst for me was that you realised very soon that the residents who still had living relatives who visited often were treated that little bit better than the ones who had no relatives at all and no visitors. Those people got overlooked. So if you knew like visiting times 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd make sure that the people who they knew were going to get visitors were all cleaned up, and they'd have clean clothes on. But the rest of them who they knew wasn't getting any visitors at all would be left to sit in pads that they'd had on for many, many hours. And what made me angry is this is how they basically treated a person who had nobody to take care of them. So every person was given a personal allowance, and if somebody smoked, for example, they were allowed X amount of cigarettes a day, say 3 or 5 cigarettes a day. If somebody was a drinker, they was allowed a dram of whiskey on a night or something like that, but it all came out of their own personal budgets. For those people who didn't have relatives, their budgets were taken, right? So they didn't get stuff. And this is where I got a gripe. And I'm going to tell you a story that is actually really funny to me. I went to a nursing home once for an interview, and I ended up not taking it only because the hours that I was offered didn't suit me, because I was a single mom at the time and I needed to work around my children, and she couldn't offer me the school hours I wanted, because that's what everybody wants when they're a parent. So I got the job, but I didn't start it because I couldn't do the hours. But she showed me around the house, and she was a lovely woman, and she was really quite young at the time. I'd say mid-20s, and I don't know where she'd got her money from to buy this home and run it, but she was obviously professional and she'd done it, and good for her. And that nursing home seemed really nice and friendly, and I liked it, and I thought, oh, it's a shame I couldn't work there. Fast forward a few years, I went for another interview in another care home, and it turned out that she owned that, and it was a second home that she'd bought. So when I saw her, we just got on straight away, and I said, I remember you from a few years ago. And she said, oh, yeah, you know. And I said, how are you doing? And she was lovely, still lovely, very, very attractive woman, but she'd changed as well. So when I seen her the second time, you could see that she'd spent a lot of money on herself, because she was more groomed, and her clothes were obviously designer, and her nails were lovely, and she looked really beautiful, and she had this beautiful car outside. And I thought, you've made a lot of money doing what you do. But I still liked her, and she was still friendly, and she said, I'm going to give you the job. And I was really pleased, because I thought, I remember the last home that you owned, and it was really lovely inside, and you was obviously a caring person, and the staff was happy there and stuff. So yeah, I'll take the job. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to this lady, but something happened to her that changed her for the worse. And we went from being quite friendly to arch enemies in a very short time. So I'll tell you a couple of little stories of what happened within that home, and then I'll do the end one. Now I've got to watch this time, so I'll make sure I've got 20 minutes to get this in. she had a duty manager on and his wife, and he was one of these, he was a nice guy, you know, people pleaser type, like bend over backwards, yes man, that type, and he was lovely, but his wife was, you could just feel something from her that wasn't right. There was something just not right with this person. She wasn't a nice person, and she was actually the opposite of nice. But I caught her doing stuff, and these stuff went against everything that I believe in. And one of them was, when you got people up in the morning, if you dealt with the opposite sex, there was supposed to be always 2 people go in. So if I went to get a man out of bed, there was supposed to be 2 of us, so there was no inappropriate behaviour. And what she would do is, because she was the duty manager's wife, we would both go into a room together to see a man, to get him out of bed, and she would send me off to get something, like, can you go and get me some towels or something like that. She always sent me on a ruse. And within minutes of me leaving the room, I'd hear the man shouting and screaming and crying and stuff, and I'd be like, what the hell? So I'd go back in and I'd go, what's going on? And he'd either be sat naked on the bed or half naked, and she'd be stood there, and then she'd turn around and go, oh, he's having a bad moment, leave him alone, leave him be. But because these poor guys couldn't speak and express themselves anymore because they'd lost the speech, they couldn't tell me what had actually happened, and it used to upset me a bit, because I thought, his behaviour is out of character. That is not how he behaves when I go in there. Every single time I've sat with that man or got him dressed, he's been really, really calm and quite chirpy and happy. Every time she went in and she was left alone, the men would become aggressive and start crying and shouting. And I don't know what she did to them, but she was doing something to them, and I know she was. Because people don't do that for no reason, and it was every man. And I soon realised that every time we went into a man's room, she'd send me straight out. And so I knew she was doing something to them, because she never did nothing in front of me. And they didn't do stuff in front of her if I was there, because I was there. They only acted up when she was alone with them. So I knew she was abusing them. I don't know if it was sexually or physically, I don't know, but she was doing something that was making them angry and upset. And so I logged that down and put a report in, and I said, I don't think it's appropriate that any of us should be alone with the opposite sex, especially with this behaviour. So it was logged, but that caused a rift then, because I'd put in a report, and I did tell the girl I was doing it. I said, I'm sorry, but there's something, I just feel it, there's something's just not right. So she didn't like me then. But then that meant her husband was a bit funny with me as well. But there was a day that a lady came in, and she said her husband was sat there and he was just shaking and crying, and I knew why. And she says to me, I don't understand what's wrong, he's always placid. And so I told her the truth, and I said, I don't know what is wrong, but I know that this girl keeps going into his room on her own, getting me to leave or go and work somewhere else, and then he starts crying. So I don't know what she does, but I know there's something that only happens when she's with him. So his wife was obviously angry and upset, but I said, you need to know. And she said, well, thank you for telling me that. And I said, I'm here to support your husband, not pander to these people. Another thing that she did that really upset me is that we had a book, and in the book you had to write down every time somebody had had the pad changed and every time they'd been showered or bathed, and you had to write it down. So if the relatives came, you could say, oh, they had a bath this morning, or it was yesterday afternoon, and things like this. She would stand there, and she never did nothing like that, but she'd stand there and she'd just stand. Oh, so I'm going to turn that off, that's my mum. I knew this would happen, it's all the time. Oh gosh. So what she would do is she'd stand there and just tick off the book, like, yes, tick, 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 everybody's had the pads changed, everybody's had a bath, everybody's okay. And I looked at that book and said, that's not true. And she told me to F off and shut my face. And I went, I don't think so. So the relatives came in, and one of the women sat there, and she said, I'm not being funny, love, but my husband smells. And I said, that's because he hasn't had his pads changed, because I've been trying to do everybody on my own, And all the staff's faces like, oh. And I went, because these lot don't want to do anything. They were sat on the phones, they were sat chatting with each other, and this girl, I don't know even know where she'd gone, but I said, the reason why it smells is because he's wearing the same pad for hours at a time, and I physically cannot take everyone to the toilet on my own when there's 15 people and the rest of the staff can't be bothered. And that caused a massive hatred towards me then. The staff hated me then, because how dare you dob us in like that, but I don't care. So I told them, and of course she put in a complaint and said, I'm not having it. And within minutes, everybody's rushing up to help him go and get changed. But by then, he had sores on him. So, and I says to her, that's what happens when people don't get changed enough. I went to see the manager, this lady, and I told her what was going on. And it was her home, she owned it. And she told me to go back to work. And I said, before I go, I need to make sure that this report is written down, because it's important that it's said. And she just looked at me and she went, why are you doing this? And I said, doing what? And she said, causing trouble here. And I said, I'm not causing trouble. And she said, I have got a budget, do you know that? Do you know how much it costs to run this home? I said, yeah, probably. I said, I've got an idea of what it costs, but I also have an idea of how much money you make from it as well, because the minimum payment you're getting is like £600-700 per week per person, and the average wage is £200. So, and you're short-staffed. So I can imagine that whatever you're paying is going into the building or whatever, but it's not going to be anything like what's coming in. So she hated me then. She hated me. She said, we've got a budget, and on that budget everybody gets 3 pads a day. And I went, 3 pads? And that's over a 24-hour period, not a day as in 9 till 5, but a 24-hour period. And if they go over that budget, if you like, with the pads, then you just have to leave them sitting in it. So they all get bed sores, and they all get really sore and angry and upset, because it's, who wants to sit in that all day? But all that money she made, and she didn't want them to be clean down there and stuff, and didn't care. So me and her became instant enemies then, because I'm not having it. Another one, she employed staff that were foreign, who couldn't even speak English, and I think it was done illegally, and she was bringing people in on a ruse, and they were all sleeping upstairs in the attic in shared rooms, and she had them all on like a rotation. And I don't even think they were getting minimum wage, but I couldn't speak to most of them because they couldn't speak English, so I couldn't ask them what the deal was. But she employed a chef who could only cook one meal, and it was goulash. That's all they could cook. And I says to her, the people in here are white British, and they've been brought up with fish and chips, cooked breakfasts, Sunday dinners, stew and dumplings, that type of food, you know, like our traditional foods. They don't even know what goulash is, and they don't like it, so they don't eat it, so they're not eating. And she said, well, that's not my problem, is it? You know, they've offered a meal. If they don't eat it, they don't eat it. And I said, but don't you think it's a bit wrong that you haven't employed an English cook who knows what they want? And she said, fish and chips and Sunday dinners don't come within my budget. And I went, okay, so I wrote that down. And I'm clocking it all in my head. Oh, don't worry, lady, I'm clocking all this. Anyway, the best part of this story is one day I went in and there was an inspection going to be taking place within half an hour. So she had all the staff on duty, all of them, even though she normally only had skeleton staff. She brought everybody in, so it looked like there were loads of people working, and she made everybody do a task. So when the officials came, they could see that everyone was busy. So she made sure that the night before all the residents had a bath. Everybody's got to have a bath, right? And everyone's going to be in clean pads. So she showed she could do it when it was appropriate and when needed, to give the public front that she cared about people. So she did it when necessary. But again, I just clock it all in my head, and I thought, I'll wait for my moment. Don't you worry, lady. 7 people comes into this building. So you've got like social workers, council officials, you've got Help the Aged. These different agencies all come in, right? And it's very, very serious because they're there to judge her home and also give it the stars. So all these nursing homes are based on stars. So if they've got like a 5-star, then obviously it's the best of the best. A 1-star is pretty much special measures, which means you better get your finger out and get this up to 3 stars or whatever. Well, there was this guy there, and he never had any relatives. He didn't have anybody who was around who was still alive. And he didn't have his budget because they used to take it from him and spend it on other things. So this particular morning, she says to me before the officials come, all I need for you to do, Kelly, is to go upstairs and on the 2nd floor to his room, lock yourself in there with him for a couple of hours and just keep him quiet. That's all I ask. That's all you got to do. And I went, okay. And she went, is that all right? For the love of God, do not let him out of his room. I said, I won't. And she said, right. So she goes off all confident, and these people all come, and she's dressed up dead smart, and she's all professional, and she said, can you all come into my office? So they went into the room, right? I went up to this man's bedroom and opened the door, and he was sat raging on the bed, and I'm not even joking, and I'm not lying. They'd put him in a women's nightie. This is no lie. This is a big man who probably used to have a lot of pride in his appearance and who wore nice manly clothes and everything. They had no clothes for him because nobody bought him clothes, and the clothes that were damaged or ruined or whatever, they were all thrown in the bin or whatever, so he had no clothes. They put him in a lady's nightie, right? Which, if he'd have had his faculties about him, he would have been humiliated. And I think he was acting up because he did feel that humiliation, because even though they can't make sense of maybe something in some ways, like words, and put things into like some kind of sense in their head, they still feel things. So they feel bad people and they feel good people, and he probably felt that what had happened to him was a humiliation thing. There was nothing for him to wear, so they put him in a women's nightie, and I thought, right, this is great. I'm happy that they did this. I am really happy that they did this. I opened the door and I said to him, let's go for a walk. And you know what I did? So he comes down the stairs, and he was raging, and he was in a right bad mood, but he couldn't have words, so he was just like, "Rah!" like this. So I thought, this is the perfect opportunity. So I took him to the door where all them people was in, and I says to him, yeah, like that. So, and he's rambling and that, so I got hold of the door handle and flew the door open, and he just walked in. You can imagine this. And he went into the room, and I went in after him going, oh, I'm really sorry everybody, I'm really sorry. I tried to catch him but I couldn't. I looked at the boss's face, and she, oh my gosh, you know, in what she was thinking in her head, she wanted me dead that minute. She wanted me to die, right? She couldn't say nothing because she was in a meeting with all these these professionals and these people, and I thought, I know I'm fired. That was the first thing I thought in my head. I know I'm fired and I don't care, right? I'm going out with a blaze of glory. That's how I like to leave my jobs, right? So I stood there in the room, and I says to everybody, I'm really sorry about this. I said, I just don't know what to do, you know. I went into his room and saw him sitting there with a woman's nightie on, and he was really distressed. And I've tried to find him some clothes that he would have worn when he was fully there, but I couldn't find any clothes for him because he doesn't have none. And one of the women was like, I beg your pardon. I said, he doesn't have any clothes. So this woman's writing everything down, and I said, and another thing, the reason why he's angry is because he's been dressed up in women's clothes, and it probably goes against who he is. So he's angry about that, and this woman were fuming. Anyway, long story short, I ended up standing there, and I said, look, I know I'm fired, so I might as well tell you everything else. So I told them all the stuff I'd seen, and I'd only been there like 2 weeks. And I told them about all the neglect and the abuse, and that woman going in rooms and men crying and screaming. that place got put into special measures because of me. And I didn't give a crap. And I stood and I turned round and I said, I'm really sorry to that guy. I said, I'm really sorry that I have to leave you because I'm the only person in this place that cares about you, and I'm so sorry that I have to let you go, but I can't stay here, can I? To the boss. And she was a mixture of about to burst into tears but about to explode as well. She was just so, she was gone. So I went to get my coat and leave, and the lady who'd been writing everything down came up to me and she actually gave me a hug, and she said, I wish to God that we had more people like you. I honestly wish that we had more people like you in this industry, because you are what we need. And she said, it is an actual crime that people like you have to leave these places for speaking out for what is right. But she shook my hand as well and she said, I wish you the best of luck and I'm sorry that you have to go, but this place. A few weeks later, I looked at the Evening Courier and there it is on the front page. It's been put into special measures, and I'm like, yes. So I didn't care that I was a whistleblower, but I did it on 3 different places. 3, because I believe that we should treat every single person in a nursing home as if that was someone we loved. So that's your mother, your grandma, your sister, your daughter, whatever it is. We should look after people the way we would look after our loved ones and how we would want to be looked after ourselves. And I don't have any problem if I got ill and I had somebody like me looking after me, I wouldn't be scared of getting ill. What scares me is that I'll end up with people who don't give a crap, and that's, to me, is an injustice. So whistleblowers, to me, I pat on the back and I appreciate and respect whatever industry it is, because it takes a lot of guts to stand up and say, I'm not doing this and I'm not going to go along with the flow because I don't agree with it. And only a few people do it, but you can make a difference, and always stand up and say no to what is right. You should never ever just go along with something because you're scared of what the other people will think, because they don't matter. They don't care about you and they don't care about the other people, so why do you care about them? They're fully aware of what they do, and if their actions are money comes before people, then shame on them. You know, I don't have any respect for people like that, and I don't care. And to me, I would rather have somebody's happiness in front of me than money in my pocket and somebody sitting there suffering. So if I would love to meet a bunch of people like me and open our own nursing home, because all you do is laughter and it'd be full of joy and it'd be great and it'd have what a home should have. But unfortunately we don't live in a world like that. But never be afraid to speak up for people who can't do it for themselves, because it's important, because one day that could be us or someone we love, and would want to hear stories about that, you know. So I'm going to leave it there because my time is just about to run out. I'm timing myself because you talk too much, and I could talk about this all day because I've got so many stories. In fact, I might write a book about this and get it written off on black market because it'll get banned straight away. Right, I'm going to go. Bye bye.